Hello, welcome to Football Player Ratings. My name is Lars Magnus, and in this video we will discuss a paper by Pantuso and yours truly that was printed in 2021. The paper describes a variant of plus-minus ratings that can be used to derive data-driven ratings for football players using only match sheet data. That is, data where, for each match, we have access only to the players appearing on the pitch, as well as the timing of any substitutions, red cards, and goals scored. This happens to be the same variant that we have used in many videos posted on this YouTube channel, and we have described the components of the ratings across several videos posted here as well. However, this is the first video where we provide a full overview of the rating variant in one go. The title of the paper that we will discuss is Maximizing Performance with an Eye on the Finances, a chance-constrained model for football transfer market decisions. This reveals that the paper is not primarily about plus-minus ratings, and so besides presenting a new variant of plus-minus ratings, the paper also considers a separate mathematical model for providing decision support for clubs during transfer windows. In a previous paper, my co-author discussed a similar mathematical model with the goal of maximizing the expected financial gains of clubs. This paper focused on making decisions based on the market values of players, but did not at the same time consider the sporting performance of the team. On the other hand, in a previous paper by yours truly, which we have also discussed in a past video on this channel, the focus was on evaluating the financial gain that comes as a direct consequence of a team's sporting success, and then using this to derive the value of a given player from the perspective of a team. This then led to the goal of the paper we are currently discussing, where we wanted to propose a model that could be used to maximize the quality of the team, while making sure that the financial performance, based on the market values of the players in the squad, is at an acceptable level. So, before we look at the player ratings, let us look at the model for decision support during transfer windows. The goal of the model is to maximize the ratings of the players in the team, here indicated by R. Players that are currently loaned out do not count, as they cannot contribute to ensure sporting success. There are then some restrictions on how a team can be composed. There is a variable, YP, that indicates whether or not a player currently has a contract with the team, meaning it either had a contract from before and has not been released, or it did not have a contract and has now been signed. A group of constraints make sure that the team is full and that there are enough players that can fill the required roles, such as having enough central defenders, but not too many. There are some logical restrictions to deal with players on loan, and there is a budget constraint. The club cannot spend more money than is available, but can increase the budget by loaning out or selling players. Finally, there is a probabilistic constraint regarding the future value of players. 1 year from now, the squad must have a certain probability, alpha, of having a total market value that exceeds a certain threshold, V. I will not discuss any further details of this here, but if you are interested in such models, you can look at the published paper or reach out in the comment section below. The model can propose which players are best to add to or remove from the current team roster in order to maximize player quality while ensuring a good future financial performance. However, the user of the model has to supply the set of relevant players, and each player considered must have a rating that describes their quality. If you have watched past videos on this channel, you may know that we like to differentiate between two types of player ratings. We have bottom-up ratings, where players are evaluated based on the actions they make, after first having assessed the value of any action that is possible to make. This is a data-intensive task and requires access to event data or even tracking data. Such data are expensive and sometimes not available at all. The second approach is the one we take. Top-down ratings are based on observing the performance of the team as a whole and then distributing credit or blame for that performance onto the players involved. A simple top-down rating is the plus-minus, which in its purest form simply counts the number of goals scored minus the number of goals conceded from the perspective of a player. Here we can see an animation that was created to illustrate this idea. The simple plus-minus does not work for evaluating football players. Basically, it's hard to differentiate between good and bad players on the same team. Adjusted plus-minus ratings used regression modeling to overcome this deficit, but had other issues that made them unusable in the context of football. Regularized adjusted plus-minus ratings addressed some of these issues and gave us a starting point for developing special types of plus-minus ratings for football players. Let's have a look. We start with a pure adjusted plus-minus model. I do present some mathematical formulas in the following, but I will also try to present the intuition behind them. So hopefully you can follow this even if the math looks like Greek to you. This model assumes that the match has been split into segments, where in each segment the set of players on the pitch does not change. This means we can create new segments whenever there is a substitution or a red card. The regression model then says that the observed goal difference in a segment should be, subject to an error term, equal to the sum of ratings of the home team players minus the sum of ratings of the away team players. Here, the home team and away team players are encoded through the values of xij. For football data, this approach does not create meaningful player ratings. The problem is that there are always a few players that have only appeared in one or a few segments, and their ratings can easily become extremely large or extremely small in a very unreasonable way. The problem with very large and very small ratings can be removed though, by using something called regularization. Regularization basically means that we use a different method to find the values of the ratings. Without regularization, we can use a method known as ordinary least squares, which simply minimizes the sum of the squares of the error terms in the regression model. With regularization, and in this particular case a Tikhonov regularization, we instead minimize the sum of the squares of error terms plus the sum of the squares of the ratings, weighted by a parameter. Then, very large and very small ratings become bad. It is better to increase the error terms slightly rather than to have excessively large rating values. This is good, but means that players with few observations tend to be rated as average players, with the average rating being 0. But we also notice that finding ratings now is done by minimizing a quadratic function. This interpretation we can keep in mind while we try to add more finesse to the model. So here is the general framework of the plus-minus ratings that the paper proposes. We set up a quadratic function which we then minimize. When minimizing the function, we get values for player ratings and for other effects we may want to represent in the function. Let's look at the extensions that were included in the paper. First of all, the different match segments that we have are not equally important. We give them a weight to indicate how important they are in terms of providing useful information when calculating player ratings. This excerpt from the paper describes 3 factors used to weigh a given segment. The time since the corresponding match was played, with older observations being less important. Then the duration of the segment, with longer segments being more important. Short segments have less information in them. And finally, if both teams have scored 2 or more goals at the start of the segment, it carries more weight. This last one seems a bit odd, but has consistently proven to help generate better ratings. The second extension is to model home advantage. The home advantage is modeled so that it can be different for each type of competition. For example, it can be larger in the European Cups than in, say, the German Bundesliga. Red cards lead to an imbalance in the number of players on each team. Thus, we compensate for this in 2 ways. First, we do not simply sum the ratings of the players on each team, but we find instead the average rating of the players on the pitch for each team. Then, this allows us to compensate for red cards by using separate dummy variables for different player count imbalances. The fourth extension is to deal with data that spans multiple seasons. The realization here is that players evolve over time. Thus, it is not reasonable to assume that they play equally well at all points in time through a long career. An age effect is therefore included, which allows players of different ages to have a certain offset added to their base rating. Here we see an illustration of how the age effect is estimated by the model. Between ages 16 and 38, we see a reasonable curve showing that young players, on average, tend to improve over time, while old players tend to play worse as time passes. From ages 38 to 42, there are some bumps in the curve, presumably due to a lack of observations, which could also partly be due to a type of survivorship bias in the data. The next extension deals with differences in league strengths. We want to help the model to differentiate better between strong and weak leagues. Thus, we let the rating of a player have 3 components. First, a base rating, which is unique for each player. Then, an age component, which is equal for all players of the same age. Then, a league component. For a given player, we look at the average contribution based on the leagues in which a player has appeared. So if 2 teams meet in a European Cup, but the players on one team has only appeared in the German Bundesliga beforehand, while the players on the second team has only appeared in the Norwegian Eliteserie, then if the match ends in a goalless 0-0, the model would be able to know that this was a slight upset, as the German Bundesliga is otherwise a better competition than the Norwegian Eliteserie. The final extension has a similar motivation to the previous one. Recall that in the standard regularized plus-minus rating, player ratings are pushed towards 0 by the regularization terms. This does not make sense when we know that some competitions are better than others. Therefore, instead we push a player's rating towards the average rating of the most common teammates. This means that if a player makes their first team debut for Barcelona, the initial rating of the player is likely going to be higher than the initial rating of a player that makes their first team debut for Go Ahead Eagles. This figure presents an evaluation of the plus-minus rating presented in the paper. It is evaluated along 2 axes. The first axis is labeled prediction loss. It measures how useful the ratings are in terms of providing a basis for predicting the outcomes of future matches. Values to the right are better than the values to the left. The second axis is perhaps poorly labeled correlation. It measures how stable the ratings are. If we calculate the ratings of players using different non-overlapping datasets, how similar are the rankings of the players? Here, higher values are better than lower values. The conclusion is that the new rating presented in this paper is quite a bit better than the ratings presented in 2 previous papers. Returning to the other part of the paper, using mathematical models as decision support during transfer windows, we found that the methodology could give some insights into the importance of age when composing a squad to balance future market values and current performances. Before wrapping up this video, here is a friendly reminder that you can find more information about plus-minus ratings here on YouTube, or on Twitter, our webpage, or our Patreon page, where some of the articles are open for everyone. The paper that we have discussed now presented the plus-minus ratings that were developed over several videos on the Football Player Ratings YouTube channel. Following this, I collaborated on several other papers, where my goal was to show that the ratings were not very good. In upcoming videos, I plan to go through these papers and show you that, for the most part, we did not succeed in demonstrating that the ratings are bad, even though we did find some ideas for how the ratings could be improved. Thank you for watching.